Working without a kestrel, reading wind, 175s versus 155s, and more this week on Mail Call Mondays. I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. Well, I would love to say we're here on another Monday, but the truth is this is actually Tuesday. We're getting this out a little bit late this week. We had some complications going on, and I apologize for that, but nonetheless, let's go ahead and get on with the show. You guys sent us some great questions, and now this is really the first regular Mail Call Mondays of 2014. So we're going to go ahead and go forward with our regular format. And our first question of the week comes from Steven. Steven asks, preparing for the 1,000-yard shot when you don't have a kestrel and ballistic computer. Well, Steven, back in the good old days, we didn't have kestrels or ballistic computers, so what we had to do to prepare for long-range marksmanship was we had to set up a dope table for the rifle. And what that generally meant was we actually had to take rough dope for that specific rifle and load, either stuff that we got from the bullet manufacturer or stuff that we got from a military manual, etc. And we had to go out and actually shoot the rifle at each yard range and note down in our data book the environmental conditions for the day that we were shooting it at, and then we had to note the deviation from the stated dope at each yard range that we were going to shoot at. We could then look at that, we could make adjustments, and we could write down in our data book the true dope for each range. Now you do that and you shoot on several different days in different environmental conditions, and you continue to note that down in your data book, and that gives you real live dope for each yard range for each different weather condition. And then when you have several different points of reference that are relatively far apart, then you can start to kind of figure out what the intermediate information is going to be. So if you've got dope, say, at 0 degrees, you got dope at 20 degrees, you got dope at 40 degrees, 50 degrees, etc. Then you can start to look in between and see what the dope should be in between those temperature ranges. And that's one of the reasons a data book is really critical. Now that we've gotten into days where we have kestrels and we have ballistic computers, we kind of start to get lazy with the regular data books, because I can go out and punch all my environmental factors into my kestrel or into my ballistic computer, and it's going to be pretty much dead on as long as I'm putting the right information into it. But back in the day, we didn't have all that stuff, so we really had to rely on information that we collected ourselves and noted down in the data book. So that's really going to be your best method. If you don't have a weather meter like a kestrel to record your environmental conditions, then you're going to need to rely on stuff like weather.com. Go in and find the closest weather station to the range that you're actually going to be shooting at and note down those environmental conditions. They're not going to be exact, but they're going to be fairly close, and they should help you get on target. Our next question comes from Brian. He asks, can you cover how to determine crosswind variations downrange? Here in Wyoming, we often have multiple strong wind variations downrange. It can be tough to judge. Well, Brian, I envy you that you're shooting in a really great environment for training. When you have large open spaces and you have varying winds at varying points, it really requires you to be on the ball, and you get really good at determining wind drift. Now, a couple of the different methods that I use to determine wind drift out in the field is, first of all, to try to observe mirage. If you have a shooting situation where your line of sight is relatively close to the ground, then you can get your mirage readings fairly good. You can set your parallax settings for different yard ranges downrange and observe what the mirage is doing at different yard ranges. That's a really good option, but there are some situations where, say, you're shooting mountaintop to mountaintop, where you really don't have mirage to read off of. In that case, you're going to have to look at what's going on close to you. You're going to have to look at what's going on close to the target and make an educated guess about what's happening in between. If you're having trouble picking up mirage, then you can always focus on different pieces of vegetation, different brush, trees between you and the target, and note what they're doing at each one of the yard ranges. So those are some good options for observing between you and the target. Really, getting a wind meter, and for training purposes, have a buddy of yours with a walkie-talkie or a cell phone. Have him go down range and stand at different points and actually take a wind reading, and that'll give you the opportunity to observe through the rifle scope what the mirage is doing near him and correspond to what the wind reading he's picking up at that location is. Same thing with vegetation. You can have him take a wind reading and then look at what the trees are doing next to him. What I like to do is I like to go around, I like to carry a Kestrel with me when I'm just kicking about out in the woods, and look at what the vegetation's doing, feel the wind on my face, feel what the wind's doing to my body, how it's pushing me around, and take a wind reading and look at the wind meter, and that helps calibrate your internal wind meter on what's going on around you. So those are some options that you can use to try to increase your experience at wind reading over wide distances. Adam asks, I'm looking for a chassis for my Remington 700 LTR, but most of what I'm finding is out of my budget. Are there any chassis out there that are a little more wallet friendly, say under $450, without sacrificing too much quality? Well, Adam, the chassis that we're working with right now is the MDT LSS chassis. That's Modular Driven Technologies LSS. And we did a really quick unboxing with it. We're getting close to wrapping up the review on it, and it's a small aluminum chassis that accepts AICS magazines, Accuracy International Chassis System magazines, and it'll allow you to attach your choice of collapsible AR-15 buttstock and pistol grip to it. It's a relatively short fore-end chassis, so it makes for a very compact package, but it really allows you to customize it for whatever you want to do. Depending upon which pistol grip and buttstock you choose, you can get that put together for under $450, and it gives you a fairly industry standard magazine system. Another chassis system that is kind of within that price range is the McQuay's chassis. If you go for one of their standard non-folding systems, then you could get getting close to that range. You're not factoring in magazines when you're talking about that price range, and AICS magazines are a little bit expensive. They run right around $70 a piece, but you can start out with one. You're still going to be better off than you would be with a fixed box magazine, and then add magazines as you can afford them later on. Another chassis system that is a little bit over your price range, but still fairly close, is the new KRG X-Ray Chassis. You can see it's hanging on the wall behind me. We're waiting for a couple of little accessory pieces before we get it mounted up and take it out to the field. But we will be doing a full review on the pre-production X-Ray chassis as soon as we can get it out to the field and get working with it. Overall, it looks to be a very rigid, very high-end chassis at a lower price point. So stay tuned for that. Now Jason asks, I live and shoot in the mountains. Is there a fast way to compensate for elevation changes? For example, it's common to be at the top of a clear cut and see a deer or elk 500 yards away and 45 degrees down. Well, Jesse, the easiest way to go about it without adding any equipment to what you currently have is to get on your computer, print out an angle cosine chart. And what that angle cosine chart is it will take the angle that you're looking at the target, it'll give you a factor to take and multiply that by your range. When you multiply the cosine by the range, that will give you your true flatline distance to the target that you need to do to determine your dope. That is the manual way to do it. That's the way we used to do it. If you have an iPhone that has a level built into it, you can set it across the top of your barrel and get an angle measurement that is fairly precise. If not, then go get yourself a protractor, a piece of fishing line, and a fishing weight, and that will allow you to measure your angle fairly well. Now, if you don't mind adding a little cost to it, then there are several different tools to be able to mount to the side of your rifle. There's one made by Sniper Tools that is actually an angle cosine indicator, And there are varying different models. There are some that read out degrees. There are some that will actually read out the cosine for you. You mount them either on a scope ring or on a pick rail on your rifle, and when you angle that rifle down, you read out the cosine or the angle off of the ACI, and then use that to compute your range. Now, if you don't really want to go through all that, if you want something really quick, really easy, but much less precise, then all you need to know is that at the more angle that you get, the greater angle you get, the less the flat line distance is going to be versus what your line of sight distance is going to be. So in that case, you're going to just need to hold low on your target. How much you hold is going to be based on the distance and the angle, but that gives you an approximation. If you really want to just use holds and just use rule of thumbs, then go through and do some angle cosine calculations and then see what your offset is from your regular distance versus your flat line distance and the angle that you're looking at. That way you have a feeling for how many inches high or low or how many mils high or low you need to hold when you're trying to engage a game animal across a large incline or decline. So I hope that's not too confusing. I hope that kind of spells it out for you. In a previous episode, we went into a little bit more detail on exactly how to do the angle shooting measurements, and I'll try to post a link to that down below so you can check that out in the description. Kendall asks, when breaking in a new barrel, I've heard running a cleaning rod down after every shot, then after so many shots, every 3 or so. What way have you found works best for you? Well, Kendall, the way I like to break in barrels is fairly simple. Load your magazine, insert your magazine, fire till your magazine's empty, reload your magazine, and continue until the barrel's broken in. I don't go through any specific firing and cleaning regimen in order to break in barrels. I haven't found it necessary. Just sending bullets downrange is what breaks in the barrel, not any specific cleaning routine. Now, if you are a bench rest shooter, then do what the bench rest shooters do. But for a tactical rifle, I got a brand new Krieger barrel. I screwed it on to our Accuracy International, and right out of the gate, it was shooting great. After probably about 20 or 30 rounds, it was holding quarter-minute angle. So it really, you don't need to go through any crazy break-in procedure. And what guys can often do is damage the accuracy of a barrel when they go through these extreme break-in procedures because they're spending a lot of time sending a cleaning rod down the barrel. So every time you run the cleaning rod down the barrel, you run the risk of damaging the crown or damaging the lead in the rifle. So for me, the most I can limit sending the cleaning rod down the barrel, the better the accuracy of the barrel is going to remain and the less chance there is for me doing damage to it. Now, the flip side of that coin is if you're using a bore guide, if you're being very careful, if you're making sure that you clean the barrel properly each time, like with a nylon brush and with the appropriate jags and appropriate size patches, and a bore guide, then the possibility of damaging the barrel is very, very limited, so you probably aren't going to hurt anything by going through these break-in procedures. You're just wasting ammo and wasting time. If you want to go for it, but there's no specific break-in procedure that I recommend. William asks, what's the coolest thing you saw this year at SHOT? Thanks again for all your advice. Well, William, there's a lot of neat stuff at SHOT in the precision rifle arena. I have to say the neatest thing I saw was the new Accuracy International AT rifle. Basically what they did is they took the Accuracy International AW, they changed the clothes a little bit on it, they added a quick change barrel feature, and now they're offering it as their lowest price AI offering. And that's really pretty cool. For $35.50, you can get a fixed stock rifle that is all the features that we know and love from the AW with a quick change barrel feature on it. Now, a lot of guys may not use that quick change barrel feature, but if you don't use it, it doesn't hurt you any. It's just there. But when it comes time to swap out the barrels on that rifle, there's no more sending it off to a gunsmith. You can just call AI North America and order a replacement barrel. Take your Allen key, unscrew the hex lock, unscrew the barrel by hand, screw the new one in, tighten down the hex lock, and you're ready to go again. That is fairly cool because it means I can switch barrels at the range if I want to without having to have a torque wrench or barrel vise or any of that nonsense. Granted, the application of that is going to be fairly small. There's not going to be a whole lot of guys that are switching barrels all the time. But again, it's a feature that's there. It's a great feature. If you don't need it, it's not obtrusive. If you do need it, it's good to go. They really have refined that system, and it is a evolutionary jump from the AE to really bring it more in line with the other offerings. They've just beefed the action up, beefed the bolt up, and I really can't say enough about it. I'm really looking forward to getting one of those in my hands. Also, of course, the AX308, they have now upgraded to a multi-caliber system with the quick change barrel system, and they took the buttstock from the PSR project and put that on the AX308 now. So the AX308 is basically a mini PSR. Really cool to see. Some other nice things to see, of course, the KRG X-Ray Chassis that we just talked about that we'll be reviewing. That was pretty cool to check out. And in the non-precision rifle arena, in the handgun type stuff, of course, the new baby Glock. We used to refer to the G26 as a baby Glock. Well, that's gone away now because we have the G42, the 380 single stack 6-shot Glock. We got to shoot that, and that was pretty cool. So little compact Glock, really nice for a backup gun or for a gun in a situation where you wouldn't normally carry a gun. You can stick that thing in a little Kydex holster in your waistband and probably not even notice it. So when they get ready to release a 9mm, we'll probably look at picking up one of the little extra slim compact Glock 42s now. Also in the non-precision rifle arena, in the handgun arena, Recovert has released one of their 1911 grip / Picatinny rail adapters. It's kind of a cool little deal. It is a grip with a extended new trigger guard and a Picatinny rail. So if you have a 1911 that does not have a rail on it and you want to be able to mount a light or a light laser combo or a laser underneath the dust cover of your 1911, then you take these grips and you remove your standard grips from the 1911, you put these on, and it is a one-piece deal. It covers the grips, the trigger guard, and the dust cover, and it adds a polymer Picatinny rail underneath the dust cover. It felt very solid when we were working with it. There wasn't any flex in it. It was just like a set of polymer 1911 grips. It adds a little bit of extra beef to the regular 1911 grips, which I'm used to shooting a Glock 21. So a little bit of extra chunk on the 1911 doesn't hurt at all, and it actually is pretty cool. The material is able to be stippled, so if you decide you want to stipple those grips later on, you can do that. And they put a lot of detail into it. They've got a nice little cutout for the magazine release button, so the extra width of the grips is not interfering with magazine release, even on a standard magazine release. You don't have to have any ambidextrous or oversized mag releases, but should you decide to add that, they have taken that into account and made sure that there's enough room in the grips to be able to get that in there. We talked to them at SHOT, and hopefully we'll be able to get one of those in to review and put some trigger time on it and really see how it fares under recoil and under fast gun handling. Sean asks, building a Remington 700 308 AAC, looking at both AI or MDT TAC-21 chassis. Any info on these setups? Well, Sean, the AI is a tried and true system, regardless if you go with an AI chassis system or if you go with the new AX chassis system. Either one works very well. There is a little bit of weight to them, but they're good to go. They're solid systems. You simply drop your action in, bolt it in, and go. Now the MDT TAC-21, we do have one here. As soon as we're finished with the LSS, that action will go over into the TAC-21, and we'll do an extended review of the TAC-21 as well as an installation video showing how to put the rifle in there. Installing the rifle into the TAC-21 chassis is a little bit more in-depth than installing a rifle into an AI chassis, because you have to remove the trigger group. The whole chassis comes apart in separate pieces, so there's a little bit extra to it. But it really doesn't look that demanding for somebody that's handy with regular hand tools. it shouldn't be a problem whatsoever. And again, our installation video should assist you in getting that dialed in. The two have pretty different ergonomics. The TAC-21 is more of an AR type system, and the AI chassis system is more of a traditional type stock. So the feeling is considerably different between the two. And it's really going to be up to you on if you want something with AR-15 ergonomics or if you want something more with AI ergonomics. One thing you need to bear in mind with the TAC-21 is you do have to remove the back half of the chassis system if you want to remove your bolt. So if you have a situation where you need to get that bolt out quickly, it's going to take a little bit longer to break down the TAC-21 chassis and get the bolt out. With the AI chassis, either you have to remove the cheek piece to pull your bolt out, or if you have a folding system, kick the stock to the side and you can get that bolt out rather quickly. So just a couple of little things to bear in mind on those two chassis. In the end, it generally comes down to personal preference, but if you got some time, hang out in the next month. We should have the TAC-21 review done. Matthew asks, do lens tints that claim to enhance target definition and reduce eye fatigue, example Oakley prisms, really work, or is it just a gimmick? Well, Matthew, think about this. If you've ever been out on the beach or out in the desert on a bright sunny day, you know if you don't put sunglasses on, your eyes wear out really quickly. You start to get headaches looking at bright things. You're always squinting, and that's really not a good thing. Put on a good set of sunglasses and your eyes relax. You can actually see a little bit better. So it's the same thing, in precision rifle shooting. Now there are lenses out there. I haven't used the Oakley prisms, but I've used a set of Ballistic glasses that have a tinted lens that's specifically designed just to knock down the blue spectrum and still allow a good deal of light through. And those seem to work really well on a little bit of overcast days. They still work well in bright sunlight, but if it's really bright out, then I'll switch to a smoke type tinted lens. If it's dull out, then, if it's dim, then I'll either use a clear lens or something of that nature. Now, the one thing that you do need to bear in mind is if you've got a $3,000 rifle scope on your rifle, you really don't want to cheap out on your safety glasses. You don't want to go down to the hardware store and just buy a regular set of polycarbonate safety glasses. Sometimes they work fine, sometimes they don't. They're often made of a softer material and they scratch up really quickly. So higher end glasses usually work a little bit better. While we were down at SHOT, we talked to Smith Optics, and they've got a couple of eye protection lines that are really directly related to the precision rifle stuff we do. So hopefully we'll be able to work with them a little bit later this year and give you some ideas of some new eye protection that's out there and what works well for what we do, which is snuggled down behind a precision rifle scope. So stay tuned for that. But lenses of different tints definitely do affect your eyes differently. They can help you. They can reduce eye fatigue. And much like the different filters that we use on video cameras or still cameras, they can change the way the light comes through and the way the picture appears to your eye. So yes, they do work. What specific ones work, or if the Oakley prisms work, I can't say at this point. Todd asks, 308, 155 versus 175 or 178, which is better at 1,000 yards and why? Well, Todd, there's a really simple way to answer this question for yourself. Just either go pull up JBM Ballistics or pull up a pocket ballistic calculator, like in this case, we used Ballistic AE, and punch in your different bullets at an estimated muzzle velocity and see what your downrange results are. Now, we did this based on some loads that we've run before, and 155 grain Lapua CNR at 2950, which is what we got out of a 26-inch barrel Remington 700. At 1,000 yards, we've got an elevation of 8.85 mils and a windage of 2.61 mils for a 10-mile-an-hour, 3 o'clock wind. Now, again, this is based upon a standard day, so 59 degrees Fahrenheit and standard barometric pressure. We're not going off anything crazy here. We went with a standard day so that we compare them all with a very good average. The 175 Sierra Match King at 2,580 foot per second gave us a 11.73 mil windage or elevation and a 2.97 windage. The 178 grain match at 2690, which is again a load that we've used, was 10.39 in elevation and 2.69 in windage. Now, I do want to point something out, because we were just pulling loads that we've used before that were already loaded into the ballistic calculator. You can run the 175 and 178s at about the same speed. So if we're getting 2690 with the 178s, we can get pretty close to 2690 with the 175s. Now again, you need to work these loads up in your rifle to make sure that they're safe and you don't have any pressure problems, but we're just doing this for comparison's sake here. Now what we can see when we look back over this, wind drift is really what we want to compare. Sometimes you'll get a bullet that will come out of your ballistic calculator and you'll see that you may get a little bit better of the elevation, a little bit less drop. But the wind drift is really what we care about, because we can calculate the distance to the target fairly well. The wind is what changes. So if you all of a sudden have a gust change while the bullet's in flight, the bullet with the less wind drift is going to have less error when it impacts the target downrange. Now when we do all this out, we notice that the CNR runs about 2.61 mils windage for a 3 o'clock 10 mile per hour wind, whereas the 178 runs 2.69. So really the difference is very, very minimal. Now we do get less drop with the 155, so if you frequently shoot in unknown distance situations, then the 155 is going to give you a little bit of an edge. You do want to bear in mind though, to get the advantage of the 155s, you really need to launch them fast. This means you're going to get increased barrel wear, you're going to be running at higher pressure, which if you get a quick temperature fluctuation, you work up the load on a 60-degree day and then you go out and shoot on a 100-degree day, you may run into some problems. You may run into an extreme pressure spike that's going to cause problems with your gun. So keep that in mind when you're trying to decide the different bullets. If you're going to stay with a more sedate velocity, you're going to stay around the 2,600 foot per second range, then you really want to stick with the 175 Match King or the 178 Hornady Match. That's generally what I do, and that's why I mainly run the 175 Match King or 178s, especially in our 20-inch barrel on our AE Mark II. Really no reason for me to try to scream those bullets out. Now, if I am loading specifically for a match where I know I'm going to run into unknown distance situations, then I may choose the 155s and I may run them hard. But there is a trade-off, and you do have to keep in mind that you may have problems with it. So I hope that gives you a little bit of information on that decision. Kevin asks, if someone wants something more than a 223/556 in an AR platform and doesn't want the weight of an AR-10 chambered in .308, how well does a 6.8 SPC compare? Well, if we're talking about target shooting, I would still take a 223 over the 6.8. If I needed something more than the 223, I would probably go to something like the 6.5 Grendel. 6.5 bullets, you have a whole lot better offerings in a high BC bullet than you do in the 6.8. Now, obviously, neither of those compare to a large frame AR chambered in either 6.5 Creedmoor or even the 308, because then you can launch a higher BC bullet at a higher muzzle velocity, and that's really all it equates to. If you can launch a higher BC bullet fast enough, you're going to get better ballistic results. So in my opinion, the 6.8 SPC is really not a good precision rifle round. If you're hunting hogs, something of that nature, deer, where you need the extra weight and you're going to be closer in, then it's probably good to go. I've pretty much discounted it for any kind of precision work because of the bullet selections. Paul asks, with all the new AR-type chassis coming out, being lighter and more rigid, adaptable, modular, as well as more accurate, will there be a day that the standard wooden stock will be replaced for the most part on bolt guns? Well, Paul, we've already reached that point. You will rarely ever see a standard wooden stock on the line in a precision rifle competition or any situation where extreme accuracy is the goal. Wooden stocks just have way too many drawbacks. Now, when I say wooden stocks, I mean the old school regular walnut stocks, beech stocks, where you're using a solid piece of wood. There are a lot of stocks out there now that are laminated wood, and really those are getting fairly close to fiberglass. They are really resistant to temperature and weather changes because there is a lot of epoxy in there holding everything together. Even further than that, there are some wood stocks that now have aluminum bedding blocks built into them, so you get most of the advantages of a synthetic stock. But as far as regular wood stocks where you're just dropping the action in and screwing it down, they really are not a good idea for precision rifle, because as the weather changes, humidity, temperature, etc., you get variances in the stock, and it can apply different pressures on the action, changing your point of impact. So the days are past where the wood stocks were the premium for target rifles. You can make a wood stock work, but there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and you're really just better off picking a fully adjustable chassis that you can dial into your body type over a wood stock that is going to have compromises here and there. Glenn asks, does bipod position on a free float rail affect accuracy, i.e. is accuracy unchanged if the bipod is attached nearest the muzzle or middle of the rail? Well, Glenn, the accuracy isn't affected at all. The weapon system is still as accurate no matter if you put the bipod right in front of the magazine or if you put it all the way out at the end of your rail. What is affected is your stability, because as you move that fulcrum closer to your position on the rifle, movements at the pistol grip or at the buttstock will translate to greater movements at the muzzle. If you move that stock further out, then you will have to move the buttstock and the pistol grip more to change the angle of the muzzle. This can actually be used to your advantage if you're in a situation where you know you are going to have to engage multiple targets on a wide field of view. Then it may be in your best interest to pull that bipod back so you can quicker swing the muzzle back and forth with less movement of your upper body. And again, if you have a very narrow field of view, a very narrow engagement window, and the targets are further down range, so you want that added stability, then it may be good to run that bipod right at the end of your handguard as far out as you can get it. Typically, if I have a choice, I'll just run the bipod as far out as I can get on the handrail to give me that extra stability. And finally, our last question this week comes from Scott. Scott asks, what suggestions do you have for a guy that wants to learn the long-range game without having access to a spotter? Well, obviously watch our videos, Scott. There are a couple of different things out there. There is a video series that is put out by Frank Golly on Sniper's Hide. That is a really good primer for precision rifle. And if you don't have access to a spotter, what you really need to concentrate on is getting straight behind the rifle and shooting from a very strong firing position, a very stable position. That way you can observe the impact of the round through recoil. You want to be able to watch that round actually hit and splash downrange so that you can see what happened, you can measure your offset, and you can get on the target quickly. That's frequently what I do when I don't have a spotter with me downrange. I make sure I have a really solid position and I drive the gun through recoil so I can observe that splash downrange. And it will take some practice when you first get down behind rifles, and especially if you're running a lighter weight, higher caliber rifle like a .308 hunting rifle. It's difficult to keep that rifle planted through the recoil, but keep at it. As long as you're using proper body position, you'll eventually get to the point where you can watch your own rounds hit and spot for yourself. That's really the best way I've found to take care of it. That's all we have for this week on Mail Call Mondays. Remember, if you liked the video, please like, share, and subscribe. If you got any questions or comments, send it to us in the comments section below or on Facebook or Twitter. Don't worry, we still have a lot of SHOT Show footage that we haven't put up. On the last day, we ran through and we just shot a bunch of B-roll of a bunch of different booths and different products that were going on. So now we have to go back and we'll do some studio work here, and I'll explain to you what we looked at and what I feel about it, and then mix that in with the B-roll. So we should be getting some of that up a little bit later this week, and we have a bunch of other projects that we're working on. Again, the KRG X-Ray, I want to thank KRG for getting us one of the pre-production X-rays right out there at the show. So as soon as we get the final pieces that we need to get that on a rifle, we'll get that going. If you guys have any questions on the KRG X-Ray, go ahead and leave them in the comment section below, and we'll leave a link in the description where you can go to check out the specs on the X-Ray. Until next time, get out and shoot!